welcome, and thank you for choosing to spend this quiet time with us. This audiobook novel has been crafted as a gentle companion for the end of your day, a peaceful atmosphere to help you unwind and let go. It is an invitation to step away from the noise and into a sanctuary of calm, where the pace is slow and the focus is on the beauty of small, quiet moments. In our story, The Slow Stitch of Afternoon Light, we will join Alice in her tranquil attic workroom. Here, surrounded by the soft scent of cedar and lavender, peace is found not in grand events, but in the simple restorative art of mending. We will follow the gentle rhythm of needle and thread and discover the deep satisfaction that comes from making something whole again. Before you settle in fully and set your device aside, should you find comfort here and wish for more moments like this, perhaps consider liking and subscribing. For now, all that is needed is for you to find a comfortable position, soften your breath, and allow yourself to be drawn into the quiet. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Choosing the Thread. The afternoon light, thick and golden, slanted through the single dormer window of the attic workroom. It was a patient kind of light, not harsh or hurried, and it laid a warm, trapezoidal patch upon the wide, honey-colored floorboards. Within this light, a universe of dust motes danced in slow, silent eddies, each a tiny spark in the tranquil air. The room was quiet, holding a stillness that felt ancient and deep. It was the quiet of stored things, of waiting fabric and sleeping memories, all held safely under the gentle slope of the eaves. Alice moved into the center of the room, her soft-soled slippers making no sound. She approached a large, low chest made of reddish cedar that sat against the far wall. Its surface was smooth and unadorned, the wood grain itself the only decoration. She knelt before it, her hands resting for a moment on the lid, feeling the familiar smooth coolness of the wood. The air in the room carried a faint, clean perfume, a blend of that same cedar, a hint of dried lavender, and the subtle dry scent of old, well-kept textiles. With a gentle effort, she lifted the heavy lid. The hinges gave a low, contented groan, and the scent from within billowed out, stronger now and deeply comforting. It was the smell of preservation, of care taken over many years. Inside, stacks of neatly folded linens lay in orderly repose, tablecloths, napkins, bedsheets, each with its own history. Her hands moved with a practiced reverence, skimming over a stack of yellowed cotton sheets before finding what she was looking for beneath. She carefully lifted out a large, heavy tablecloth made of fine, cream-colored linen. As she unfolded it, the fabric cascaded into her lap with a soft, whispering rustle. It was a beautiful piece, woven with a subtle pattern of ivy leaves that was only visible when the light caught it just so. But it was not perfect. Near one of the hemmed edges was a small frayed tear, no bigger than her thumb, a weakness in the otherwise strong weave. A snag from a past gathering, a moment of carelessness long forgotten, had left its small wound. Alice spread the damaged section across her knees, her fingertips gently tracing the edges of the fray. The linen felt incredibly soft, worn down by countless washings and years of use. This softness was a testament to its life, and to her, it made the cloth more precious, not less. She looked at the tear not as a flaw, but as an opportunity, a quiet invitation to add her own small chapter to its story. The task was clear: to mend, to restore, to make whole again. Satisfied with her assessment, she rose and carried the cloth to the comfortable cushioned armchair that sat in the pool of light from the window. She draped the tablecloth carefully over the back of the chair and turned to a small wooden table beside it. On the table sat a beautiful sewing box, its lid inlaid with mother of pearl. She opened it, revealing not a jumble of supplies, but a tidy, curated collection. Her destination was a section filled with wooden spools of thread arranged like a muted rainbow, soft blues, faded greens, and a dozen shades of white, cream, and ecru. Her fingers brushed lightly over the tops of the spools, feeling the tightly wound fibers. She was searching for the perfect match, a thread that would disappear into the old linen, a humble servant to the original fabric. She picked up one spool of ivory thread, then another, holding them one by one against the tablecloth in the clear light. One was too bright, another too yellow. Finally, she found it. A spool of fine, unbleached linen thread, its color so perfectly matched to the aged fabric that it seemed to be spun from the same moment in time. Holding the small wooden spool in her palm, she felt a quiet sense of rightness. The first step was complete. The thread had been chosen. Chapter 2. The Needle's Eye. Alice settled into the soft depths of the cushioned armchair. The chair embraced her with a familiar comfort, its warm fabric a gentle support as she positioned herself to catch the best of the afternoon light. The golden sun streamed over her left shoulder, illuminating her lap where the damaged section of the linen tablecloth was now spread smoothly. The light was perfect for detailed work, clear and direct, without being harsh, making every single fiber of the fabric visible. The rest of the attic room seemed to recede into a soft, focused backdrop of warm wood and muted color. She held the chosen spool of ivory thread in one hand and a tiny, elegant pair of silver sewing scissors in the other. The scissors were shaped like a stork, a small, whimsical heirloom that felt balanced and purposeful in her grip. Bringing the end of the thread to the blades, she made a single decisive cut. The sharp snick of the scissors was a clean, satisfying sound that cut through the deep silence of the room for just an instant before the quiet settled back in, undisturbed. She now held a length of thread about as long as her arm, ready for its task. The next step required a moment of focused stillness. From a small velvet-lined compartment in her sewing box, she selected a needle. It wasn't a large, robust needle, but a slender, silver darning needle, long and fine, with an equally fine, elongated eye. It glinted in the sunbeam as she rolled it between her thumb and forefinger, its surface perfectly smooth, its point perfectly sharp. This tiny tool was the bridge between the thread and the cloth, the agent of repair. Now came the quiet ritual of threading it. She brought the very tip of the thread to her lips, moistening it just slightly, to create a stiffer, more manageable point. This was an old unconscious habit, a small piece of wisdom passed down through generations of sewers. She held the needle steady in her left hand, its eye a tiny waiting window against the bright light from the window. In her right hand, she held the thread, pinching it close to its end. The world seemed to narrow to this single point of focus, the tip of the thread and the eye of the needle. Her breathing slowed. Her hands were perfectly still. There was no sense of frustration or impatience, only calm, deliberate intent. She brought the thread forward, guiding it with absolute precision. On the first attempt, it passed cleanly through the eye, a small, silent victory. She pulled a few inches of thread through, leaving a long tail, and let the needle hang, suspended and ready. She did not tie a knot at the end of the thread. Instead, she would use the first few stitches to anchor the thread within the fabric itself. A more elegant solution that left no bulky knot on the underside of the repair. This technique required a little more care, but the result was a smoother, more seamless mend. It was a quiet testament to her philosophy that the best repairs are the ones that respect the original object, adding strength without adding clumsiness. She rested her hands in her lap for a moment, the threaded needle lying across the worn linen. The simple task was complete. The tool was prepared. The silence of the attic deepened around her, a silence full of peace and potential. Outside the dormer window, a single white cloud drifted slowly across the vast blue canvas of the sky. Inside, in her small circle of golden light, Alice felt a profound sense of readiness. The stage was set for the slow, meditative magic of the stitch. Chapter 3. The first careful stitches. The tablecloth was arranged just so across her lap, its weight a soft, comforting presence. The area with the frayed tear was smooth and accessible, held gently taut by the fingers of her left hand. In her right hand, she held the threaded needle, its silver length catching the light. She wore a simple silver thimble on her middle finger, its surface dimpled with the familiar pattern that had met the heads of countless needles. It felt like a small piece of armor, a trusted companion in her quiet work. She took a slow, centering breath. The air smelled of sun-warmed linen and dust. Her focus narrowed to the tiny landscape of the tear. She could see the individual threads of the cloth, their ends frayed and untidy, a small spot of chaos in the otherwise orderly grid of the weave. Her goal was not just to close the hole, but to reestablish that order, to coax the threads back into a community. She began not at the edge of the tear, but a little distance away in the solid, undamaged fabric. She pushed the needle down into the cloth, the point sliding through the weave with a whisper-soft sound. She brought it back up a few millimeters away, pulling the thread through until only a small tail remained on the underside. Then she took a few tiny, almost invisible back stitches directly over the thread's tail, locking it securely into place without a knot. The anchor was set. Now, the real work of darning could begin. She started her first line of stitches, a series of small running stitches parallel to the threads of the tablecloth's weave. Her hand moved with a steady, gentle rhythm, down, up, down, up. The needle rose and fell, a silver fish swimming through a sea of pale linen. The only sound was the incredibly soft swoosh of the thread as it was pulled through the fabric, a sound quieter than a breath. As she reached the edge of the hole, her stitches did not stop. They leaped across the empty space, the thread spanning the gap like a tiny bridge, and continued on the other side. She completed the first row and then started back again. Her new stitches nestled right beside the first. Slowly, methodically, she was laying down a new warp, a foundation of parallel threads that covered the entire damaged area. Her gaze was soft but unwavering, her attention completely absorbed by the task. The rhythmic motion was deeply meditative. It emptied her mind of all other thoughts, leaving only the simple tactile reality of the moment. The feel of the soft linen, the smooth glide of the needle, the gentle pull of the thread. The afternoon sun crept slowly across the floorboards, but in Alice's small world of concentration, time seemed to slow down, measured not in minutes, but in the steady accumulation of stitches. Once the first layer of threads was complete, she turned her work 90 degrees. Now she began to weave the needle over and under her newly laid threads, creating the weft. This was the most intricate part of the process, a miniature act of weaving under one thread over the next. The needle dipped and rose, its path careful and precise. With each pass, the frayed hole became less of a hole and more of a dense new patch of fabric born of her patience. The frayed edges of the original tear were disappearing, incorporated and stabilized by the new weave. She continued this gentle rhythmic work until the entire area was filled. The tear was gone. In its place was a neat, slightly raised rectangle of new stitching, its texture subtly different from the surrounding linen, but its color a near-perfect match. It was a small scar, but a clean and honest one, a mark of healing. She finished the final stitch, secured the thread on the underside with a few more tiny stitches, and snipped the end. The needle was finally still. Chapter 4. The Warmth of the Iron. With the last thread snipped, the mending was complete. Alice held the tablecloth up, letting the newly repaired section fall away from her lap. She turned it in her hands, examining the patch of darning from both sides. The stitches were even, the tension just right. It was a good, solid repair, a small zone of strength where there had once been weakness. A quiet feeling of satisfaction settled over her, as gentle and warm as the sunlight streaming through the window. The next step in the ritual required a change of location. She carefully folded the large tablecloth into a more manageable size, taking care not to crease the new stitches too sharply, and rose from her comfortable chair. She moved to the other side of the attic room, where a sturdy, waist-high wooden table stood against the wall. Its surface was scarred with the faint marks and scorches of past projects, a history written by hot irons and sharp tools. On it rested an old black electric iron. It was a heavy, substantial object with a simple cloth-covered cord and a single dial for temperature. So, Alice plugged the cord into a wall socket. The iron remained silent, but she knew that deep within its heavy metal body, a heating element was beginning its slow work. She placed her palm flat on the wooden table, feeling its cool, solid surface while she waited. Patience was part of the process. There was a faint, metallic smell in the air as the iron began to warm, the scent of heating metal and electricity. From a nearby shelf, she took a pressing cloth, a simple unbleached square of cotton, and a small spray bottle of water. She laid the pressing cloth flat on the table and then placed the mended section of the tablecloth on top of it, underside facing up. The new stitches looked slightly raised and a little stiff compared to the supple, worn linen around them. The iron's job was to meld them together, to smooth the transition between old and new. She waited another moment. Then she heard it, a soft internal click from the iron. It was the sound of the thermostat, a quiet signal that the correct temperature had been reached. She lifted the iron by its smooth black handle, feeling its satisfying weight and radiating warmth. This was not a flimsy modern tool, but one built to last, to hold its heat steadily and evenly. Before pressing, she spritzed a fine mist of water from the bottle onto the pressing cloth directly over the repaired area. The water darkened cotton momentarily before beginning to disappear. She then lowered the hot, heavy iron onto the damp cloth. A soft, satisfying hiss rose to meet her, the sound of water turning instantly to steam. A small white cloud puffed out from the edges of the iron, carrying with it the wonderfully clean, warm scent of hot, damp linen. It was one of the most comforting smells in the world, a scent of cleanliness, care, and home. She didn't scrub the iron back and forth. Instead, she pressed it down firmly, held it for a few seconds, and then lifted it, moving to the next section. She worked her way across the entire patch of darning with this calm, deliberate motion. The warmth from the iron penetrated through the pressing cloth and the tablecloth, a deep, soothing heat. She could feel it on her fingertips as she steadied the fabric nearby. After the final press, she switched off the iron and set it to rest on its heel. She carefully peeled back the pressing cloth. The mended patch was transformed. The stitches had settled, sinking into the weave of the linen. The area was now perfectly flat, smooth, and uniform. Running her fingertips over it, she could barely feel the transition. The warmth had set the repair, making it a true and integral part of the fabric. The tablecloth was not just mended, it was healed. Chapter 5. Folding the Linen. The iron sat cooling on its heel, its job done, its faint metallic scent fading from the air. The tablecloth lay on the wooden table, the newly pressed section steaming ever so slightly in the quiet attic room. A gentle warmth radiated from the fabric, a tangible residue of the care it had just received. Alice let it rest for a few moments, allowing the heat and the last vestiges of steam to dissipate, letting the fibers settle into their new, smooth state. The afternoon light had softened further, its gold deepening, to a richer, more honeyed hue as the sun began its slow descent. She ran her hand one last time over the mended area. It was perfect, smooth, strong, and unobtrusive. The tablecloth was whole again, ready for another generation of meals and gatherings. A quiet, gentle sense of completion filled her. The small act of restoration was finished, its purpose fulfilled. Now came the final peaceful step in the ritual, putting it away. She moved to one end of the long table, picking up the edge of the tablecloth. The fine old linen felt cool and heavy in her hands. She began to fold. Her movements were practiced, economical, and imbued with a gentle reverence for the object. First, a long fold down the middle, bringing the two hemmed edges together perfectly. She walked the length of the table, her hand smoothing out the fabric as she went, creating a crisp, straight crease. The soft swoosh of the linen sliding against the wood was the only sound. Another fold, and another. The large, flowing expanse of fabric was gradually tamed to a neat, manageable rectangle. With each fold, the weight in her arms grew, a satisfying heft that spoke of quality and substance. The subtle woven pattern of ivy leaves disappeared and reappeared as the layers built upon one another. She wasn't rushing. This final step was as much a part of the meditation as the stitching itself. It was an act of closure, of returning things to their proper order. When the last fold was made, she was left with a thick, soft square of cream-colored linen. She held it in both hands for a moment, pressing it gently, as if to impart a final sense of peace into its fibers. The scent of the cloth was clean and neutral, with just a faint, lingering ghost of warm steam and cedar. It felt solid, dependable, and full of quiet history. Carrying the folded tablecloth, she walked back across the room to the cedar chest. Its lid was still open, waiting. The rich, clean scent of the wood welcomed her back. She looked down at the other textiles lying in neat stacks within a library of fabrics. Carefully, she found the appropriate place and lowered the tablecloth onto its designated pile. It settled with a soft sigh, rejoining its companions in the fragrant darkness. There was a sense of profound rightness in the action. The tablecloth had been brought out, its small injury tended to with patience and skill, and now it was returned to its safe resting place, restored and ready. Alice lingered for a second, her hands resting on the folded linens, before reaching for the heavy lid. She lowered it slowly, the hinges giving their soft, familiar groan. The lid met the base with a quiet, solid thump, a sound of finality and security. The scent of cedar and lavender was once again contained, the treasures within protected. She stood up, brushing a non-existent piece of dust from her hands. The attic workroom was as it had been, yet different. A small act of creation and care had taken place. The light from the dormer window was now a soft, rosy color, signaling the approaching evening. The day's quiet work was done.